A major blow came down on Thursday to daily fantasy sports players as Nevada ruled that this is in fact gambling. From CineSport, I'm Pete Mundo, joined by Jim Litke, Associated Press columnist. Jim, first off, from a Nevada standpoint, what does this mean for players in that state going forward?
Well, it's going to be a little bit harder to play, and I think the next week or two is going to tell us even more, about how difficult it's going to be. What Nevada wants, the fantasy sports leagues to do is basically get a gambling license, which would put them on a little bit more equal footing with the sports betting industry. So, Nevada's not doing this entirely with clean hands. They're literally trying to protect a legalized sports industry that they spent a lot of time carving out. What's going to be interesting is whether or not other states with gaming laws attempt to use whatever precedent gets established in Nevada to further constrict the fantasy sports leagues in all the other states.
Jim, how about that? Nevada, will this somehow, their decision, affect what other states end up doing?
I think it will in a big way. I mean, it's not an exact precedent, but I think you can start to look at how Uber is being treated by different governments, both at the national level and at the state levels. And we're seeing a whole sort of patchwork of laws. I mean, you've had, these are kind of disruptors in the way that they're affecting an already established industry. And so the industries that have built, a big business out of this have had to face regulators. They've had to buy, in the case of cab companies, for instance, cars and buildings. And so Uber stepped in. In that same way, sports fantasy is taking advantage of an exemption in existing law to try to skirt all of the regulatory stuff that the sports books, for instance, have had to do. They've had to meet a whole different set of standards. Basically, fantasy sports has almost no regulation, and that's largely because it was really tucked in at the last minute into a piece of legislation in 2006 that was actually about the security of America's ports. And so I think we'll see more and more regulation beginning to constrict how fantasy sports operate. The question is whether it will be so tight that eventually it won't be any easier or any more fun, for instance, than having to go through all the other steps that you have to do in order to place a bet with a sports book.
He's Jim Litke, Associated Press columnist. Jim, thanks so much.
Thank you.